science enthusiasts. I'm your host, Jason Zakowski. I'm a high school chemistry teacher, but you probably know our dogs, Bunsen and Beaker. They're the science dogs on social media. This show takes what's best from their account, the curiosity and fun found there, and swirls it into podcast form. Every week, we're going to take some deep dive into an area of science and look at the research that's going on with our pets. We'll also have an expert guest who will enthrall you with their area of knowledge. This is the Science Podcast. Hey everybody, welcome back to the Science Podcast. We hope you're happy and healthy out there. You will be listening to this after Halloween. We had fun dressing the dogs up and sharing pictures on Twitter, and we had a big Halloween costume contest on Twitter with hundreds of people entering their pets. That's super cute and really fun to see all the different costumes. On the Science Podcast this week in Science News, we're going to take a look at the new data and the new emergency authorization for the vaccines for kids that are younger. What went into the decision, and this is for our American friends, and Canada is going to quickly follow suit. In pet science, now it's not really pet science, I just wanted to talk about another science article, and this one's about animals, and it's about birds from a zoo they found had reproduced asexually without fertilization. Wild. Our expert guest is Kayla Ivey, who's a cosmetic chemist and a wedding photographer. What a neat mix. Hey dogs, why couldn't people see the bird? Well, it was in disguise. Oh my God, that's so bad. All right, on with the show, because there's no time like science time. This week in science news, let's talk about the emergency authorization use of the Pfizer vaccine in the States. Canada won't be too far behind. Canada usually is a little bit behind the Americans when it comes to the vaccine stuff that's been happening lately. And the vaccine for 11-year-olds to 5-year-olds was just given emergency authorization in the States. With the vaccine, there's been tons of misinformation with adults, and I can only imagine that misinformation is going to be all over the place with kids. Here's what we know with how COVID affects kids. Well, young children aren't as affected by COVID-19 as adults are. They're not spared the disease. It's not number one of things that has caused kids to die. If we look at American data, it's something like 7th or 8th overall for causes of death, but it wasn't there before, right? It's not like 0 kids are dying of COVID-19, and it's not like so few kids are dying of COVID-19 we don't have to worry about it. There have been many kids that have died of COVID-19, and even more that have gotten really sick and wound up in the ICU. The data shows that thousands of kids have been hospitalized so far, and something like 8,300 kids, with a third of those needing intensive care. It was also mentioned that there's inequity of the kids that are in hospital, more kids who are Black and Hispanic and American Indian as opposed to kids who are Caucasian, and also more kids that come from lower socioeconomic regions. It's also noted that the hospitalization numbers is with masking, is with kids being sent home from school, with all of these other public health measures, and one can only imagine how much higher it would be without masking, with letting kids come to school sick with COVID, without isolating children. If we get kids with the vaccine, we start to pick away at those problems. Long COVID is a problem with kids that do get COVID and survive. A certain percentage of them, in the United Kingdom, for example, close to 10% suffered long COVID with symptoms up to 12 weeks after getting COVID. Not only that, I can testify that, as a teacher, COVID has really affected kids. Now, most of the kids that I teach have been able to get the vaccine, but kids at younger grades haven't. And if they test positive previously, the whole class would have to isolate, plus the teacher. And the amount of disruptions that has created has been mind-boggling, both for schools, but also the parents that have to watch kids now that aren't in school anymore, especially for really young kids, like 6, 7, that you can't leave alone by themselves. And as we vaccinate kids, those numbers will go down. How did the vaccine do when they looked at its effectiveness in the data, right? It's kind of unethical to take, it was People always ask, like, how come it's not available for kids? Well, in the first clinical trials, you have to exclude kids from the clinical trial. And people ask, well, how come they didn't test it on pregnant women in the first clinical trials? And the answer is, again, when you're testing a new drug on a population, children and pregnant women are usually removed or not allowed to take part in that because it's kind of unethical. The interesting thing is that of the thousands of people that took part in the clinical trial, a certain percentage of them wound up getting pregnant. So then they had data on, even in that first clinical trial, they had data on how it affected the pregnancy, and it didn't. It had zero negative effects on women who are pregnant, but there was no data on kids. It's a smaller dose, still 2 shots, and it worked really well in the different age group. There was a strong immune response. So when they took a look at the kids in the group and compared it to the adults, there was a similar antibody response in the kids, even though they had a smaller dose. And it appears to have the same amount of efficacy as the original clinical trial with Pfizer. It's around 90% effective at keeping kids from developing the disease. There were no serious side effects. The side effects were normal vaccine side effects: headache, fatigue, sore arm, and there weren't any cases of anaphylaxis, like allergic reaction, and there were no cases of that heart palpitations that occurred really rarely with Pfizer, myocarditis. There was none in the follow-up period. They do say that once we have potentially millions and millions of kids getting vaccinated, there could be the odd anaphylactic reaction to it. There could be the odd myocarditis reaction to it. But they're expecting similar numbers to what the adults had in the millions and millions of doses of Pfizer given to 12 to 29-year-olds where that heart myocarditis occurred. There was about 877 documented cases that required 829 of those to be hospitalized. There was no deaths, so 0 deaths from that myocarditis. So the percentages of that issue is really, 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 really low. And they said, the benefits of getting all of these kids vaccinated outweigh the tiny percentage amounts of risks from the vaccine itself. Emergency authorization in the States, you can probably look to get your kids vaccinated within the month, I would assume, and I hope Canada follows quickly. The data shows the vaccines are safe, they're effective, and kids should take it. Even though the chances of COVID is less for kids, the chances aren't 0. It's just one step towards getting everything back to as normal as possible from this pandemic. That's science news for this week. This week in pet science. Well, it's not really pet science. We'll say this week in animal science. Okay, this story is so cool. The impotence of it came actually from somebody shared the article with me, but it was also shared by Karina Newsom, the amazing wildlife biologist who we had on Spaces last week. And it's about birds that reproduced asexually. Okay, what does that mean? Where does this story come from? So this comes from the San Diego Zoo, North America. And it's a bananas discovery that was written about in the Journal of Hereditary. And it was found by routine sampling of condors, California condors. Okay, this story is really interesting. It comes from the breeding program in the zoo for condors. And 2 female birds, dams, I guess they're called, 2 condors, 2 female birds, they were housed with fertile partners. So there's no reason why the fertile partner wouldn't have got jiggy with the female birds. And they found through molecular genetic testing that the female offspring, a few of them, had only genes from the females. So 0 male fertilization. The eggs were created asexually from 1 genetic parent. It's amazing. This is so cool. So I went down the rabbit hole. This is called Parthenogenesis. It's a natural form of asexual reproduction where an embryo that is not fertilized by sperm just continues to develop normally, getting all of its genetic material from the mother. Can you imagine that happening in humans? Oh boy. What a mess. Anyways, this phenomenon is not new. Like, biologists know about it, but it's really, really rare in birds. And it's normally only observed in birds that don't have access to a male partner. So it's unlike this situation at all. Now, these female birds have produced babies, chicks with male partners many times. And one of the male partners has been with the female partner for a long time. I think they said like 20 years, and they've had 20 throw babies together. So it's not like these birds are unknown to each other, and it's not like the female birds didn't have access to a male partner. That's what makes this so interesting. They are the San Diego Zoo, and the researchers involved are pretty excited because this is the first recorded time where this has occurred, where there's been the possibility or availability of a suitable male. Studies that go back to 1965 and 1968 and even 1924 found that in finches and domestic pigeons, this has occurred, but really rarely. And even though the egg continues to develop, a lot of them failed to hatch. What's so interesting about that is that if it happened in captivity, there is the possibility, of course, that you could extrapolate that out to the condor population at wild. So this could have significant implications for the world of birds. So while we're not talking about any specific pet-related news, I thought it was just so interesting that within North America, within condors, within captivity, and with suitable mates, some female birds reproduced asexually without the need for males. It's kind of profound when you think of it. Are males going to be out of a job soon? Oh, you can come up with your own joke there. That's pet science or animal science for this week. Hey everybody, thanks for listening to our show week after week. If you want to know how to support the Science Podcast, here are a couple ways. It's always going to be free to download, so you'll never have to worry about paying for it. But, things do cost money running a podcast, and here are a couple ways you could help us out. One is join our Patreon page. It's amazing. It's growing. It's almost like an extended family. There's multiple tiers of support, and we have lots of fun perks for being part of our Patreon page. The other way you could support us is giving us an awesome review on Apple Podcasts or Google Podcasts, anywhere you can rate our podcast. Give us a great review. The third way you could support the show is checking out the BunsenBurnerBMD.com website. We have awesome merch there. We worked really hard finding quality merchandise that's comfortable with vibrant colors. And you'll find in limited quantities over the next couple months, maybe even less, the 2022 Bunsen and Beaker calendar. So 3 ways to support us: the Patreon page, 2, give us a great review, 3, head over to our merch stop and see if there's anything there you'd like. Thanks everybody. Now on to the interview section. It's time for Ask an Expert on the Science Podcast, and I'm excited to have Kayla Ivey. And Kayla, you are a cosmetic chemist, but also a wedding photographer.
Yes.
Hi, how's it going?
It's going well. How are you?
I'm good. Where are you in the world? Where are you calling into the podcast from?
In, sunny, bright Ohio. No.
Oh, no, that's sarcasm? What's going on?
It's very gloomy in Ohio. I think Cleveland is it's like one of the cities that sees the least amount of sun throughout the year.
Oh, no. It's like Vancouver, right, in Canada.
Yeah.
You think Vancouver is like this gorgeous sunny place, and it is, but then it rains all the time.
Yes. So today is sunny, but usually throughout the year it is not.
Have you lived in Ohio? I'm sorry if I say that wrong. Ohio?
Yeah,
have you lived in Ohio most of your life? Like, is that your home state?
No. So I actually am born and raised in Florida. And then I came up to Ohio for college, and then I've just stayed since I graduated.
All right. So Florida is kind of humidly wet, isn't it? Is that what's going on with that?
And it is the Sunshine State, so it's always sunny there.
Oh, it's just hot and humid.
Yes.
Sunny and humid. Oh, gotcha. I'm trying to remember. We went to Disney World is in Florida, right? That's
correct.
The one. Yeah. We went there, and I remember outside our hotel, it was like crazy muggy. And maybe they do something in Disney World, like they have these giant Mickey Mouse dehumidifiers or something, but I felt like the climate was different.
Oh yeah, they definitely make it so that it's the happiest place on earth.
Oh, that's funny. So let's talk a little bit about you. You're a cosmetic chemist. Could you tell everybody like what education do you have to do that? Like what's going on there?
Yeah, so I personally have my bachelor's degree in chemistry from Kent State University. I'll plug them.
Oh, Penn
Um,
State. I've heard of that.
no, Kent State
Oh,
in
Kent State.
Ohio. Yeah.
Okay. Maybe in some football clip.
Yeah. Well, Kent State has a notorious past, which they make sure everyone knows about. So, but it's yeah, I don't know how to explain it, but yeah, I don't
Oh,
know.
it's okay. I'm sure if I name dropped my university, the University of Alberta, most Americans would be like, "What?"
I know where Alberta is.
No, that's true. That's true. Yeah. Anyways, go ahead. I'm sorry I derailed you.
That's okay. Yeah, so I have my bachelor's degree from Kent State in chemistry. And to be a cosmetic chemist, it's actually interesting because not many universities actually offer like a cosmetic chemistry or cosmetic science program.
So
So,
cool.
yeah, so
What?
right now.
What?
So right
Sorry. What? Like one of the things I always ask before we get really into it is like you went into chemistry. Were you interested in science as a kid? Like this path that you took?
I was always interested. I always wanted to like make shampoo or something. I'm not at shampoo yet, but I am. I'm getting closer, I guess.
Oh, cool. Like so when you were little, you were mixing up random stuff to try and make your own elixirs for your hair?
My mom would, and I thought it was cool, and it'd be like
Oh.
cool if I could actually, learn about it and learn how to make them stable. Like a lot of times when you're mixing things, it kind of becomes like a three-tiered like cake kind of looking,
Yes.
because you don't know how to mix it all together, so it becomes one thing. And so
Yeah.
that always interested me,
Right.
definitely.
And then you went into your bachelor degree where this unique program was offered.
Well, the program's not actually offered at Kent. It's just
Oh.
chemistry, but the but some schools do offer the program, but it's just for most people that work it, they'd probably just have chemistry or biology or biochemistry degrees, like me.
Like you. So can you talk about where you are right now with your work? Like you're a chemist. Do you work with cosmetic stuff?
Yeah, so when it comes to like the definition of a cosmetic, the FDA, which is American.
Is that your Federal Drug Administration or some kind of
Yes.
acronym, right? Okay.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. So they are the ones who kind of are in charge of cosmetic products. And they define a cosmetic as like anything that is intended to like be applied to a body for cleansing, beautifying, promoting attractiveness, or altering appearance. So it covers makeup, nail polish, but then it also covers like soap
Oh.
and hand
And
soap.
do you work with some of that stuff, like the production or like I'm just so curious.
Yeah, so where I work, we do hand sanitizer and hand soap are the main exports where I work. And I'm in research and development, so I work more
Oh,
on
cool.
creating like the formula, the base of what we're going to make, and then I get to work with scale up to make sure it can be transferred to like our manufacturing center. So I get to see things from when it's decided we should work on it all the way until it's launched, which is really cool.
What's the most exciting part of that process? Is it like the R&D part? Is it like the end where you're like scaling it up to get it out to folks? Like where are you the most excited, or is it the whole process for you?
I think for me, the most exciting part is the R&D part where
Hmm.
I'm trying different things. But then the most exciting, but not necessarily the best way, is scale up because sometimes things can fail at scale up.
Oh,
So
they work like when you're using like 10 milliliters instead of like 10,000 liters
yeah,
or
it makes
something.
a really big difference.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, so we've had like that's happened to me before where I'm like, wow, this works really well if I'm just making, a couple liters in the lab, and then as soon as you scale it up, it does not work as well. And then we have to go
Are
back.
you like, dang, yo, this is the worst.
Oh
You have to go
yeah.
back to the drawing board?
Yeah. Usually it's the good thing about where I work is there's so many people who have this wealth of knowledge that it can be.
Oh.
So if something does happen, usually someone like on the first try will be able to guess what we could do
Oh.
differently that'll make it better. So that's nice.
What do you prefer making, like soap or hand sanitizer? Like, do you have a
Definitely hand sanitizer.
So this is so timely. I saw that in your. I apologize. I definitely creeped through your bio and you were in some thread on Twitter. And I was like, I have to talk to this person. We have to see if she'll be on the podcast. Because hand sanitizer for the last like year and a half has been super key. 2 years maybe. I don't know how long this pandemic has been going on.
A while.
So is this like something new your company started to make to for the demand? Because hand sanitizer was nowhere and then it's everywhere now, it seems.
Yeah, so like contrary to some of how like sanitizer kind of blew up, but I actually work for one of the companies who's been making hand sanitizer since the late 90s. So
Okay.
it was an easy transition when focus turned into more hand sanitizer. So this has been my main job actually, even though, the pandemic's only been a few years, this has been my main job for 5 years is working on hand sanitizer.
No, I'm sure you can't tell us like the specifics. I'm just so curious. What's the process to make hand sanitizer without giving away your company's trade secrets?
Yeah,
You're getting in big trouble, right?
yeah. So I think the easiest way to explain it is so hand sanitizer is, alcohol hand sanitizer and certain other actives that can be used are regulated by the FDA as an over-the-counter drug because it has
Oh,
a kill
really?
claim, because it has a claim, for
Oh,
killing germs.
yeah.
Um, so it's regulated as like a topical antiseptic. And it's not so basically because it's regulated that way, the FDA has their own kind of rules and regulations that we have to follow for it to even be classified as a hand sanitizer. So obviously, we make sure we are within regulation. But yeah, so for what I do mostly is just making sure it has the right amount of ethanol in it so that it is, killing the germs on your hand. But then part of my job is also making sure it has enough moisturizers or other ingredients so that it doesn't leave your hands feeling dry or
Cool.
sticky.
Oh yeah. So no, one of the like I teach high school chemistry, right? And right before Alberta, Canada shut down schools during the first lockdown that we had, that was when coronavirus got to Alberta from wherever, and it was spreading
Uh,
rapidly, right? We didn't have vaccines and there was no masks anywhere, right? Because just you couldn't get them aside from
yeah.
people in hospitals. And people panicked and bought two things, toilet paper and hand sanitizer.
Yeah.
So our school, we were having like this all happened like the Friday evening, Saturday, Sunday, people panic shopped. And all throughout the entire province, schools didn't have hand sanitizer and kids were coming back Monday and everybody was this was in the early days. So it was kind of scary, right? We didn't know how coronavirus would affect kids or whatever, right? You didn't know what the symptoms were. This was really early on.
Yeah.
So I like Googled how to make hand sanitizer and I used like the leftover chemicals that we had, like pure alcohol and glycerin. And I made a giant vat of it for the school, but the kids hated it because it was so slimy. I think I put too much of that glycerin stuff in it.
Yeah.
When you make it in the lab, do you have to run tests like that? Do you like, we'll mix it up and do you have like people come in and say, hey, how does this feel? Or like, I don't know, like how, I'm just so curious how it goes from like what I did when I messed up the ratios. Obviously it had enough alcohol to do the job to something that you're making, which is leagues better.
We definitely have focus groups who
Really?
can
That's
tell
so
us,
cool.
how they like it. And then I feel like once you've been working there for even like a year, you get to the point where you can tell if it would pass like our internal quality standards. So sometimes I can just have someone else in my lab try a product. Um, and that can sometimes be enough to be like, okay, this is bad, or we can keep moving forward and maybe take it into focus group.
Do you get to experiment with different fragrances? Like are there different, does your company make like a bunch of different types of hand sanitizer or do you have like the hand sanitizer and that is what do you know what I'm getting at?
Yeah, so we do get to experiment with fragrances. the products don't always have, so we have some fragrance free, and then we have some that are fragrance, but we don't have that many fragrance products. But because we're very picky about which fragrances like will make it to the final product, that is one of the like really fun process for me anyway, because it means I get to smell a whole bunch of things that smell really good, and then it gets decided like which one we'll finally get to.
Oh,
And it's a
wow.
lot. We go through a lot just to find like that one or two that we're actually going to put in a product.
What's your favorite smell? What's your favorite fragrance?
It's funny. I feel like I'm trying to think. So personally,
Yeah,
I
personally, like
really,
or if you don't know, that's okay.
I
Like
know I really like the fruity one. So
okay.
fruity is like a an area of fragrance, and I definitely think fruity is one of my favorites. But as the company I work for leans towards citrus, so
Citrus. Okay.
it's pretty close. So, but yeah, like lemons and limes, and it's pretty nice.
Do you have to make your own fragrances there? Like do you have to whip up some esters or something like that? Or do you get that
Yeah,
those like things into those additives to add?
yeah, we leave that to the experts. So we work
Okay.
with like expert fragrance houses.
Gotcha. Okay. I can imagine that you probably there's some fragrances that you're like, nah, this should not be in hand sanitizer. Is there a
Yeah,
smell that
well,
is there a smell that's just like a no? I would be curious, like if it smelled too good, people would eat it.
yeah, and I think that is something we have to balance. So you don't want it to smell like edible. You don't want it to smell
Mm.
like a food or a beverage. You want it to smell like it'll be refreshing on your hands, but not necessarily that someone is going to try to eat it. You don't want
Yeah.
people to eat this.
This is cookies and cream, or like hot apple pie, or chocolate chip cookies that just came out of the oven.
Yeah, fresh baked brownies. No, no,
Oh
no.
my god, yeah. Well, one squirt for my hands, one squirt for my mouth, right? Don't
Yeah,
do that.
please
If you're
no.
listening, do not eat
Do
hand
not do
sanitizer.
that.
Do not do that.
No,
Yeah, there's a lot of alcohol in there. That's not good for you.
and it will
Um,
not be pleasant.
now with soaps, you said you prefer hand sanitizer. Do you have a little? Could you talk a little bit about soap making at your job?
It's interesting because it's more of like a hand wash because um, soap has its own uh, soap as a word is usually like you think of soap from like medieval times, right, where people were using um, like animal fats and things. That is
Yeah,
not
yeah.
what I do.
Oh,
So
you don't
sometimes
go
the
wrangle up
terms,
a bunch of like bears and get some bear fat or something like that, hey?
yeah, no,
No,
yeah, woolly
okay.
mammoth, no, um, yeah,
Well, you'd be able to charge a
yeah.
premium
So
for that, hey? No, I'm just kidding. Go ahead.
yeah, 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 exactly. So something that we mostly do is we're not making those types of soap, but more like hand washes. Um, And I mean, those are cool too. They're just, I feel I like the challenge, I think, of making sanitizer more than soap because I guess I've gotten really good at soap. So it's not always as much of a challenge.
Oh, cool.
And, when you're working somewhere 40 hours a week, it's nice to, especially as a scientist, it's nice to feel like you're solving a problem or really getting met with some type of challenge.
Oh, I see. Like instead of following a recipe that's already been done, you're the one making the recipe or tweaking it.
Yeah, it feels like I have more to explore.
And one of our standard questions we ask our guests is to share a pet story from their life, because a big part of our podcast is science and animals. Do you have a pet story you could share with us?
Sure, yeah. I don't know how fun it's gonna be, but I can talk about my pets and
I
just
think
how
if you
cool
just
they
talk
are.
anybody who talk about their pets, it's fun.
Yeah, that's true, true, true. Yeah, so I have two orange tabby cats. They kind of look like Garfield, but they're not as big as
Oh,
Garfield.
really? Aw.
They're not as large, but they're definitely just as sassy. I think it's an orange cat thing. Not sure, but I feel like they have attitude. But it's great. So one of my cats is Cinnamon, and he's 15, and he's been with me
Oh,
for 6 years. Yeah. And then the other one is Daphne, and she's 4, and she's been with me for 1 year. And they're the best of friends half the time. and then the worst of
do they have the
enemies.
same personality? Or do they have very different personalities?
Very different. I think Daphne is a little more dominant, like she wants to be in charge, but she's also the younger one. And Cinnamon is a lot more laid back. And so sometimes, like, something that Daphne likes to do is when Cinnamon's like sleeping or taking a nap, just minding his own business, she'll come out of nowhere, just like smack him on the face with her paw and then run away. And then he just like meows at her.
Oh. It's kind of like Bunsen and Beaker when Beaker was a puppy. She would just like, well, still today, she just randomly would attack Bunsen. He'd be just like lying there because he's a great big couch potato, right?
Yeah.
And then the little Beaker would come along and just like, the worst was she would get up on the couch and like WWE, like high ropes, like jump off the high ropes and like, oh yeah, and come down and get him. And he'd be like half asleep. So
yeah.
Those younger, sometimes somebody told me it's if they're, especially with dogs, usually the female dogs are the bosses. I wonder if it's that way with cats.
I mean, I've seen that. I feel like Cinnamon is a boy and Daphne is a girl, and I feel like she wants to be in charge, but he just doesn't care enough. But yeah, she's definitely the bossier one.
Do you take them outside on leashes? Are you trying to do that leash thing that's becoming popular with cats?
Yeah, so I take Cinnamon out on a leash. Daphne won't let me put her in a leash. But Cinnamon, like, he understands what it means now, so I could just grab the leash, call his name, and he sits there like and lets me put it on him. Yeah,
oh my goodness.
Yeah, and then I have a line in my backyard, like kind of what people do for dogs, and then we hang out there. So he can kind of roam, but he can't go too far because he's on a line.
That is have you taken a video of that? That would break the internet to have a cat just, put a leash on a cat and it's willing, because I've seen videos of the exact opposite.
I know, yeah. I don't even usually take video. Yeah, I don't usually take video, but he's pretty good. He's not very good at being led on a leash, which is why I keep him on a line, because then he can just freely roam. But I would love if he could be led, because then I could take him to like a park or something.
Oh, you'd be the most popular person at the park. I guarantee it. Anytime I've been out and a cat has been on a leash, they're like the star of the. Maybe that would be uncomfortable though.
Yeah.
Everybody looking. I had a guest. I don't know. She on about a year ago, and she has I think it's a bearded dragon or iguana. Anyway, so she has a backpack that she takes this lizard in that has a peeky hole, so the lizard can look out through the peeky hole, and like wherever she goes, people love coming up to say hi to her lizard in the backpack. So
yeah, I've seen those for cats too, but I think my cat would get too claustrophobic. He doesn't even like his carrier.
Oh no. Yeah, that's a common thing with cats. They kind of go a little bananas in closed containers.
Yes. So now when I take him places like the vet, I can just put him on his leash and then put him in the car that way.
Aw, I love it. Well, thanks for sharing about your cats, Cinnamon and Daphne. The other standard question we ask our guests about is the super fact. And the super fact is something that that when you tell people kind of blows them away a bit. And it could be something from your life. It could be a scientific fact, anything. Do you have a super fact you could share with us?
Man, I wish I had a really good super fact. I feel like I don't have a good super fact. I'm trying to think now. I was thinking about this too, and I'm like, maybe I do know, but then I'm like, maybe I don't know. Let's see.
It could just be something from like your work, like an additive, something that is in hand sanitizer that we don't think about, or something that is kind of like mundane for you, but everybody doesn't know about too.
Oh, you know what? I always forget about those, because it's one of those things where it's so common to me that I don't think it's as interesting, but then everyone else is like, what? That's okay. Yeah. So, okay. And then I do have one. Yeah.
Okay, go. I can cut out this middle part too, so it'll be really seamless. It's all good.
Okay. Yeah. So for hand sanitizer, at least the way, the company that I work for makes hand sanitizer, we use a denaturant in our hand sanitizer. And this is something I didn't really know that much about until I started making hand sanitizer. It's something you don't think of, but it makes sense. And what a denaturant basically does is it makes it so that it's undesirable to consume.
Really?
Yes. So most sanitizers on the market have denaturants in them so that to deter people from consuming them.
It just makes them taste like super bad? Like, is that the idea?
Yeah. Yeah, either to taste. So there's different options you can use as a denaturant, and what some of them are like, some of them are just really bitter, like the most bitter thing you would ever taste. I think, yeah, and then some of them will like induce your gag reflex.
Oh, cool. Really?
Yeah,
That's
so that
so
you don't
cool.
keep like so that you don't drink it. So yeah, there's different options that companies can use, but that is something we put in hand sanitizer so that people
Now,
don't
is that
consume it.
part is that by law? Like, is that part of some FDA thing, or is that just something your company does for like good consumer chemistry? You know, like just good for the betterment of people who buy the products to keep them
Yeah.
safe.
Yeah, I wish I knew if it was law. I'm not sure if
Mm.
it is law, but most companies do it. I wish I knew. I know. I don't know. I should know, but I don't know.
No,
Yeah, but there was because you hear stories where people are trying. I think part of it too is just making it so that people don't use it in any other way that it's not intended to be used.
yeah,
It's
like school in schools, if there is hand sanitizer that isn't necessarily like kept under close watch, at least the older stuff, that was some kids would steal that because it had alcohol in it, right?
yeah,
um
and
and
you
I
don't
guess
want. Yeah.
yeah, you don't want that. And I guess with that denature it, is that part of your focus groups? You're like, okay, now everybody lick your hands and see what happens, or is
No.
no, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, that would be awful. But there are some federal agencies that um, do make it that will at least test to make sure that it's denatured well enough.
Oh, gotcha. So they're like, well, it has this in it, and we know it does that, so no
Yeah,
need
I
to
think it's
involve
more analytical chemistry than
analytical.
licking it.
Okay, yeah, I was being a little sarcastic, but I was still in the back of my mind. I was a little bit
Well,
curious.
maybe, yeah.
There's always you always hear about those you guinea pig humans, right, who make a living by going from test to test. They're like, okay, lick your hands for $100 kind of thing.
Yeah, I could
But
never, but
I had to do in university. I made a little bit of money by being a guinea pig, like a human guinea pig for a whole bunch of different scientific studies. Right? They would give you a small amount of money to partake in
yeah.
a little study, but most of it was just like sociology or psychology or there.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it wasn't like licking or eating hand sanitizer.
Yeah, my university had that too. It's funny too, because when you're dealing with, well, I don't know how it was for you, but I feel like from when I was in college, when you're dealing with college students, like they would give people money, but in reality, all they really had to do was give people like a slice of pizza, and they would have
This is so
gone through
true.
anything.
This is so true. One of the studies I was involved with was a food chemistry study where they were testing different atmospheres on meat, right? For those like sandwiches that are vacuum
Oh,
packaged, and they're testing like different
yeah.
atmospheres to see if it changed the flavor. And the only reason, like, I got a couple $100 for doing this study, but I got fed every single week for lunch by eating all of these different types of sandwiches. And some of
Amazing.
them weren't
Exactly.
great. Some of them tasted a little weird, but you know what? You're probably still going to eat a bad piece of pizza if it's in front of you, if you're a college
Yeah,
student.
definitely in college. Yes.
Maybe not now. Maybe not now. Well, that's a great super fact. Denaturants, hey?
Yes.
Cool. I do teach high school chemistry, so this is kind of like really timely for me. I'm going to put that in, I think, in one of my lessons when we get to alcohols in organic chemistry.
Yeah, that's cool.
Okay, so the last section is the your passion section. So what our guests are really into outside of their area of work. And I've moved the big question that your second part of your whole life to the end, and that's the fact that you are really big into photography as a wedding photographer. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, so I started my photography business. Well, it started off as me just taking, I had a cool camera and I was just
Hmm.
taking photos of like Ohio. So like
Okay.
landscape photos and, and then about 4 years ago, I switched to taking photos of people. And now I'm photographing like 20 weddings this year.
Oh, congratulations. That's great.
Yeah. So it's really cool. And I mean, I love going to weddings, like just in general. I love weddings. I know some people don't, but I really like weddings. It's like a party, and then you get fed, and then it's all sappy. I love it. You get your little emotional part out of the way, and then you get to eat and party. So it's amazing. And being able to photograph it and go through with, a lot of these couples is
Oh.
just really fun for me. Yeah. And then looking back at the photos, and then it's nice too, using like the more of an artistic side of my brain, I guess, instead of not necessarily being too scientific when I'm at these weddings and photographing people and just doing whatever they do. So it's fun.
Yeah, that definitely puts the A in STEAM. Hey, art.
Yes.
What you do. How did the first gig come about? I'm really curious about that, because you do this as like a side hustle or a side gig. How did your first wedding thing come about? Like, was it a friend of yours that say, "Hey, could you photograph our wedding?" Or I don't know, I'm just curious.
Yeah, that's basically what happened. So
Okay.
I was only really posting, I had an Instagram, and I was only posting like, landscape photos and travel photos. And one of my friends was getting married, and she was trying to do it under a certain budget.
Yeah.
And they hadn't even, they were even thinking of maybe even foregoing a photographer. And then she just asked me like if I'd be interested, and I was going to go to the wedding anyway. So I was like, yeah, sure. And that was my first one. And it's really funny looking back, because that was the first wedding I photographed. And I feel like it's not necessarily like I feel like I've grown so much since then, but they love their photos, it's like, and that really put things in perspective for me, that even if, like, as a technical person, you can be like so critical of yourself, but what people in the photos, like the subject of the photos, all they really want is like a nice photo of themselves, So it was really cool, because they still will refer people to me, and I cost 10 times as much as they paid. And I've grown since then, and they still are like my number one referrers. So it's really nice.
I snuck through your website, because you have a website, and if you share that with us, we'll put it in the show notes.
Okay.
Your photography skills are amazing. Like, those pictures are gorgeous. So
Thank you.
good
I
job.
appreciate that.
I feel like this could be quickly become a Reddit thread if I ask some things, because you're intimately knowledgeable about what happens at weddings. Right? You probably have seen some amazing things, and my guess, you've probably seen some pretty bananas things. Is there any fun story you'd like to share from being at a wedding and being that photographer that follows the guests and couples around?
Yeah, I mean, I have been very fortunate that I don't have like bad stories, which is really nice, because I know some people do. But
Where
I
the
do
bride and
have,
groom get a little bit too much to drink, and there's a big
yeah,
fight, and everybody gets arrested.
yeah. I've been really lucky. I haven't dealt with that. But one thing that I do tell people now, because it happened at the third wedding I ever photographed, and this is like a tip that I tell like every couple now, is to make sure they eat like breakfast and lunch on the day of their wedding. A lot of people forget to eat, and dinner isn't until 7.
Yeah, later.
Right. So it's usually like the bride and groom and the bridal party. A lot of times they will forget to eat. And so at one of the weddings I did, it was in a beautiful Catholic church, and the bridesmaids and groomsmen hadn't eaten all day, and it was like 2 o'clock, and one of the bridesmaids passed out, and it was very loud. And because it was a beautiful Catholic church, so you do anything and it's just like an echo. And we had to like stop everything, and all she really needed was like a sandwich and some water, and it was super scary. But now I tell everyone, like, have you had breakfast? Have you had lunch? Make sure you eat. And if you haven't, I will bring snacks, because I do not want to have to deal with, like, you don't want that to be like something, because that couple, they probably talk about that every year now.
Yeah.
Like, remember that time our bridesmaid? Like, yeah. So I tell everyone now,
It's a whole thing. My brother got married in Mexico, and
Oh,
we went out the night before. I don't drink alcohol, but I got food poisoning, I think, the night before.
oh
And I
no.
was the best man at the wedding, and I just about passed out because it was so hot. It was like on the beach, the ceremony, and I
Yeah,
had to like leave the ceremony because I was gonna like keel over, and I had to go sit down on in the shade just because I was so sick and
yeah.
dehydrated, I think. So that's a great tip. I mean, maybe don't get food poisoning, but definitely make sure you're hydrated and you have some food in you. Yeah.
Yes.
So you have a dual role. You're like the photographer and then like a low key everybody's mom, right? Like,
I try to be, yeah, because I don't, yeah. So when I'm at weddings, I don't partake. So I don't drink when I'm the photographer.
mm,
And I make sure everyone else is okay. Try to make it so that um, the couple can just have as much like fun as possible without having to think about all these other things. So anything that I can kind of block from them even knowing about or seeing, you
you run
know,
interference on some things,
yes,
hey?
I will run interference.
You like shove the drama off to the side and they don't even
Yeah,
know
I'm
about it,
like,
hey?
please walk away. Yeah, exactly. Yes.
Have you had to shoo people out of the way, like where because couples go to like really cool places to take pictures, or do you have to scout that ahead of time? I'm sorry, that's like 7 questions in one question. Um,
No, I can answer that. Yeah.
okay.
So what ends up happening is something I had to do like for myself because I have not always been a like as assertive as I could be.
Mm.
So something I've just had to practice is just being as assertive as possible, thinking like, okay, this is their wedding day. These other people don't know that. They don't know you. You'll probably never see them again. So just go up to them and you can be as nice as possible, just go up to them and be like, hey, once people know that it's a wedding, they're usually get out of the way. But I also can make things work. Like recently, like a couple of weeks ago, I had a couple and we were trying to photograph them at this really cool place in downtown Cleveland. But there was these like people there just taking selfies and they did not want to move. I asked and asked and they refused to move. So I was able to actually
Uh,
like put the couple in a spot like far enough away from them where we still got the photo they wanted and the people that were taking selfies are like hidden behind their heads. So you
they're
like can't
probably
see them in the
annoying
photo.
Instagram influencers, I bet.
Yeah, who knows? So yeah, but you can't see them in the photo, but we know that like three other people were there. So it's really nice that like it was so I can make it work. I can make it work.
That's cool. That's cool. My last question is after your pictures, do like did you have to teach yourself touch up stuff on Photoshop or other editing software?
Yeah, so I got really lucky and my high school had like a I forgot what they called them, but basically when in my high school you could like concentrate in a certain area of something so people could be like art concentration or something
Mm.
and I was able to be digital art concentration. So I actually
Oh,
took 2 years of Photoshop in high school.
that is a learning curve, I'll tell you that.
Yeah.
Since we started making Bunsen and Beaker merch like a couple of years ago, it's like, oh, I'll just edit this on Photoshop. No, it's a bit of a learning curve to figure that out. So
Yeah,
I've,
so I got lucky.
that's cool. That's cool. Did you sorry, I have just so many questions because this is it's actually super interesting to me. Because I take so many photos of our dogs, right?
Yeah, of course, yes. As you
um,
should.
do you ever have to edit stuff out in Photoshop? Like, oh man, there's this thing in the background, got to get rid of that, or
Yeah,
a
so
watch
there's
is showing, or something like that.
certain things that I have like my own standards, right? So there's certain things I always will make sure I edit out, or at least try to. And like one of those things is like let's say the photo, like we're taking photos in a public place, I try to edit out trash cans. Um,
No,
because you don't want to see trash cans in the back.
you
And
don't.
then
No.
yeah,
Yeah.
and sometimes I edit out like people in the background of photos. Or I turn them into trees, which is a cool thing I did the other day where I was able
That's
to just like
awesome.
put a tree on top of the people and it just looks like there's more trees than there really are there. Yeah, so that's something I do. And like if we're taking photos on the water, sometimes I edit out like sometimes there'll just be buoys and just random stuff like on the water. It's like, what is this? I just want to see the sunset, you know? So I'll edit out like those too if it just doesn't make sense. I like to be able to deliver the photos like as fast as possible. So the less editing I have to do, the better for that. So I try to like make it so that like day of I'm kind of like photographing around those things.
Right. Yeah, the less editing you have to do, man, that can save you so much time.
So much time.
I do have one more question. Have you ever had to photograph a wedding that had a theme? Like what, you know how some people have themes at their wedding, like a Western or steampunk or something like that?
Yeah, so I've only done one so far, and it was fun. So last year it was a COVID wedding, you know, so they had a big wedding plan, but because of the pandemic, they scaled it down a lot to like 30 people. And they ended up having a fiesta themed wedding. So there was a Mexican restaurant catered. The reception was so colorful and it looked like you were probably somewhere in Mexico. It was really cool.
Oh, that's cool.
And they gave everyone like margarita like mixes as their favors. Yeah, it was like a glass and then like a little margarita mixer was the favors. And yeah, it was really cool the way they did it. And it was fun. And then, I mean, the bride and groom weren't really dressed up like fiesta, but everything else was.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that would be that would be really interesting from a color choice, right? Because everything around them would be popping and they would be in their whatever, you know, more traditional wedding stuff.
Yeah, so it was, and I mean, and fiestas, it's literally every color of the rainbow, you know, it's a lot of colors. So it was cool the way they had it. And they still popped because I mean, the dress, you know, stunning. And then he did wear like red. So he didn't wear like, he didn't wear like a jacket because it was hot and it was outside. So
I love it. Okay, well, thank you so much for sharing your photography passion. And remember, everybody, if you're close, did you say you're close to Cleveland?
Yes.
Right. So you probably, if somebody wants you to photograph their wedding, you're probably not flying to San Francisco or something like that unless they're paying you.
I mean, if it was San Francisco, I might consider. But I do like to be able to sleep in my own bed at night. So
there you go. So if you're close to Kayla's area, check out that link in the show notes. We have a link to her. We'll have a link to her wedding photography page. So aside from your wedding photography page, where can people follow you on social media? Do you have a account people could follow you at?
Yeah, so on Twitter, I'm at KI Graphics. And I'll warn you now, most of what I tweet about has more to do with like Marvel or Broadway than like science.
I just saw this. I'm on your Twitter page. You have an Eternals thing right here. You retweeted an Eternals thing.
Yes, I love like Marvel and just, well, sci-fi in general, but I love Marvel too. Star Wars. Yeah. So that's mostly what I tweet about is those things, just as a warning. And then I have on my Instagram is at Kayla Ivey Photography. And that one is just all my wedding work. You know, it's a nice little portfolio. And then my website is kaylagraphics.com.
Nice. I have a couple Marvel questions for you before we wrap up. Is that okay?
Yes. Oh, of course.
How excited are you for Ironheart?
I mean, I feel like more information keeps coming out. Like they're just like kind of trickling in the information. But I did see last week that they're going to make their first appearance in the next Black Panther.
Yeah, exactly.
That's going to be cool. I'm excited. I don't know what that movie's going to be about because I know they had to rewrite it.
It's devastating that Chadwick died. Oh my goodness. Oh
yes, definitely.
So devastating. That's such a good movie. Black Panther's probably, I don't know, if I was to rank the Marvel movies, it's way up there.
Agreed. It was a solid story. And everyone involved made it it was a great story. Yeah.
All right. So this is a tough question before we wrap up with, speaking of Marvel movies. What is your favorite of the Marvel movies and what is your least favorite?
Oh, no. Okay. I feel like my favorite is I'm trying to think because it's about like rewatchability, you know, because the one I've seen the most is probably Thor Ragnarok because
me too. Thor Ragnarok.
I think it has the most like rewatchability, right?
Yeah.
And then, but I feel like when people ask my favorite, I'd probably say like the first Iron Man, because it started this, and I love that movie and it's a great story. And then least favorite
or
is
maybe we don't, if that's tough, we can leave that one out. I don't know. I have one that's kind of my least favorite, and that's Iron Man 2. That one was a bit disappointing for me.
I feel like the one I watched the least is Iron Man 3.
Iron Man 3, yeah. That was kind of a throwaway story too.
Yeah, so I can see that. Yeah, that's definitely the one I watched the least.
I love Thor Ragnarok. Our family is big into cosplay. That's my artistic thing. That's my artistic thing outside of my day job. And I built we cosplayed at one day as the Thor Ragnarok crew. So I built a Korg costume.
Oh.
And my wife went as Valkyrie, and my
That's
older
so
son.
Cool.
Yeah, my older son went as the game master.
Yes.
Yeah. And then my youngest son, I built him Meek. So he was in and then I made a little stuffy Meek, right? So it was sitting on his chest in like a baby Bjorn.
Yeah, oh my goodness. That's really cool. That's cool.
Yeah, I had to work on my Maori accent though. Hey man, I'm Korg. Like,
yeah, that's hard. That's tough.
That's so hard.
That was pretty good though. That was really good what you just did.
Yeah, the best part of that is we were walking around and some kid, he was like some 15-year-old kid. He was cosplaying as Noob Master 69. He was just so he had a headset on and he had a t-shirt. And then he's like, "Oh, I have to get a picture with Korg." And I was like, "Oh man, this dickhead's here. Is Noob Master 69?"
That's so good, though. That's so good. Yeah, I'm excited for the next one. I think it's going to be in the same kind of vein as Ragnarok. So I think the next Thor is going to be amazing.
Wait.
Yes, I'm excited.
Taika Waititi is a genius.
Amazing. Yes. I can attest to that. It's
now that we've lost like a bunch of listeners, they're like, "Oh, he's talking about Marvel again." I'm just so happy I was able to connect with you on this. That's amazing. It has been my absolute pleasure to talk to you today. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for taking time to talk to us on the podcast, Kayla.
Thanks for having me.
Okay, it's time for story time with me, Adam. If you don't know what story time is when we talk about stories that have happened within the past 1 or 2 weeks. So, actually, I'll start. If you don't know, Beaker is a little demon sometimes. But yeah, Beaker bites Bunsen too, so Beaker actually bites Bunsen. It's not like a play bite with Bunsen, it's an actual...
No, it's still a play bite.
It's a play bite, but it's a mean play bite. Anyways, the fun thing is when Beaker's super tired, she just kind of like flops on the ground. And then you can pick her up and she does nothing. And she'll lay with you, and she does nothing. And then she falls asleep on you, and it's so cute. And then what happens is, I pointed out to Dad and Mom, like, "Hey, look, I've got Beaker." And then Mom's like, "Oh, that's so unfair. But you get all of the Bunsen time. So what is it? Fair or unfair?" Dad, do you have a story?
So the dogs get to go on many fun off-leash walks. We're very lucky where we live on the farm in rural Alberta, Canada. And the only problem is that Bunsen comes across things that he loves out in the wilderness: moose legs, deer legs, and poop. And he found some poop out in the field. And I normally, if he looks like he's going to go see some poop, I can get to him in time and say, "What are you doing?" And he looks at me with his big eyes and he's like, "Please go away. I was going to do my thing." And I'm like, "No, you can't." And then he runs off. But he went out in the field and I couldn't get through the barbed wire fast enough because he scooted underneath. He found some poop and he rolled in it. And it's almost winter and we don't have to worry about that. And this is not a daily occasion. It happens occasionally. He stinks so bad. It is so bad. Like every time he moves, it's like poo smell comes off of him. It's just disgusting. And this will lead into Chris's story. So gross stuff. Yes, the dogs are fun on social media, but to tell you the truth, they're just like other dogs, and they have pros and cons, and one of Bunsen's things that he does is he rolls in poop of coyotes or wolves or something, and it's just disgusting. Ugh.
Mom, do you have a story?
I sure do. So Bunsen thinks he smells great. Eau de poo. And it is so aromatic, and he's so happy. However, when Adam came upstairs, I said, you need to be very careful because Bunsen reeks. And then my stepdad came over today, and Bunsen has not seen him in 5 minutes, it seems. And Bunsen was like on him, like, well, basically like Bunsen is on poop. Like he was going there and he's like, hi. I said, no, you need to not touch Bunsen because you will smell so bad. So that happened. And tonight I said to Jason, I said, we are going to the drive up salon. Basically it's Pet Value, and you can go in there and they have, kind of like car wash bays for dogs. And Bunsen was very happy to get into the car. He's like, what? I get to go into the car without Beaker? What is this sorcery? And we drove to town and he was still so happy. And we get to the pet store, still happy. Jason said, I don't think he remembers this place.
He did.
He went right in there, and then he was like, oh no. Oh no.
He remembered too late.
He remembered too late. Anyway, brushed him down, washed him down. He's got a blow dry. So he's all fuzzy. And there we are in the store getting ready to pay. And I look over and, oh, what do I see? I see the toys that are the hedgehogs. So, of course, I had to buy one for Bunsen and one for Beaker because Bunsen was so good. And plus, I love Beaker. So we get home and I gave the hedgehogs to Bunsen and Beaker. And funnily, Bunsen took both hedgehogs, and he was
favorite toy.
They are his favorite toy, and he was hoarding them.
They make that sound when he bites them.
Yep. He just pushes his nose into it. Beaker will destroy. She surgically removes the squeakers, but for right now, Bunsen has been hugging them like a toddler does with their teddy bear, and it is very, very cute to see these little hedgehogs in Bunsen's marshmallow paws. And that's my story.
So the funny thing is, while we're doing story time, the dogs are chewing on their chews, and they know we're talking about them. They know it, and they just like look at we'll be like halfway through a point, and they'll just look at us, and they know that we're talking about them because they're so smart. Anyways, that's story time. I hope to see you guys on the next podcast episode. Bye-bye.
That's the end of another podcast episode. Thanks for tuning in week after week to listen to our show. Special thanks to our expert guest, Kayla Ivey, who talked to us about cosmetic chemistry and photography. We'd also like to give a shout out to our patrons on Patreon. Our top tier patrons get their name read at the end of the episode. If you want to hear your name, head over to the Patreon page and sign up. Take it away, Chris.
Chris Kelly, Samantha Dodd, Kimberly Bond, Nate Stephenson, Debbie Anderson, Courtney Proven, Renee Hardy, Mary Ryder, Shelby Leggett, Dan Fry, Mary Coos, Katla Lynch, Marianne McNally, Andrea Persons, Elizabeth Bourgeois, Karen Beth St. George, Bianca Hyde, Leela Perillo, Lynn Armstrong, Lisa Swartz, Catherine Jordan, Donna Craig, Lila Ashier, Jody Ogren, Liz Button, Kathy Zerker, and Ben Rathert.
For science, empathy, and cuteness.